Hold on to that thought, D, because I want to get your your opinion on that as well. But let's talk to the man who covered the Eagles down there in Houston, Texas. And here's an interesting part. We're getting to John McMullen a little late in the show because apparently the Eagle players who were supposed to be interviewed, they were all in there watching the end of the Phillies game. So it delayed the whole process. But here's John McMullen joining us from Houston. John, they're 8-0 now, and we've been picking at it a little at the carcass about they didn't stop the run tonight. But how did you see tonight's effort?
Yeah, I didn't love the game plan. I thought they should have came in running the football early against the 32nd ranked defense in the NFL against the run. I thought that made sense. Not that they couldn't pass the ball. They kind of could pass the ball at will. But they made some mistakes, typically, that they haven't been making. They lost their first fumble of the year, which is kind of amazing that we talked about that in game number 8. There were some missed throws from Jalen Hurts early, but then the receivers really started getting wide open, particularly Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown. Miles Sanders, when they finally did go to him, really clicked in the running game. But, I think there was a little bit of at least taking the Texans a little bit softly, and I think that haunted them. But we talked about, and Seth knows, we talked about this in pregame, they're going to miss Jordan Davis. They went away from the 5-man fronts very early in the game, and you could see Dameon Pierce was gashing them early. Then they played more Marlon Tuipulotu and even more Marvin Wilson inside, and it was a little bit better. But those guys aren't Jordan Davis. So they lost some versatility, at least for these 4 weeks, and hopefully Jordan is only out for the 4 games. They lost some versatility with those fronts. And, they don't tackle well on the back end. So if you don't get things done up front in the rushing game, this team's going to struggle to stop the run.
Hey, John, when you talk about the tackling or lack thereof, once again, you see too many guys trying to throw shoulders into a big body running back, trying to knock them off their stride. That's not going to happen. Too many chicken wings being thrown. Basically, I said during the game that a couple of times, Dameon Pierce basically beast moded a lot of guys on this Eagles defense. When you talk to the players, what do they tell you in terms of why the tackling has been so porous?
I think from the player standpoint, and even Jonathan Gannon more so, he hasn't played up. I think the advanced stuff, Pro Football Focus, Football Outsider, stuff like that, says they're a bad tackling team. They don't think they're a bad tackling team. I don't know why.
Wow.
Because that's been the one aspect that it's pretty evident that they don't tackle well. But look, I think it's a give and take. I really do. Because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson again with an interception, and that was a great interception. He's a playmaker. Darius Slay's a playmaker. He's not a great tackler. James Bradbury is a playmaker, not a great tackler. Even Kaiser White is a playmaker linebacker. He's not a great tackler. It's kind of a give and take. And in the modern NFL, they want to give away tackling to make those big plays and to stop the passing game. That's where the Eagles are. And I can't necessarily disagree with them because they're 8-0. But, we have to talk about everything involving this team.
Right.
So if you want to talk about what they don't do well, there's not a lot. But I think defensively it starts with tackling.
See, John, I think that's a philosophy that I don't buy into, because there's not, every single game is not going to present the opportunity for you to be a playmaker unless you create the stress, by first shutting down the run and then applying pressure to the quarterback that allows you to be a playmaker, okay? So the Eagles have been really good playmakers against the teams they've played. I got some numbers for you. The combined record of the 8 teams that the Eagles have played is 25, 36, and 1, okay? Now, I know that they can only play who's on the schedule, but that kind of gives you an idea of the level of talent that they face for one. And my thing is, okay, what kind of adjustments are you going to make that allows you, you know, to create the kind of stress that you want to create. Like tonight, you know, you had an opportunity, and I'm not trying to take anything away from what they did. They got 3 sacks, all by Javon Hargrave. They got 2 interceptions, you know, one by CJ and one by James Bradbury, okay? So the things that I assume they deem to be important metrics, they're meeting those metrics right now. But what happens when you play against the upper echelon quarterbacks that don't make those types of mistakes, and you play against a running game that can be as efficient, you know, as it needs to be, considering you played against a bad offensive line today, you played against a second-year quarterback who's scared to death, and you played against a running back who ran like his hair was on fire and dared you to tackle him to death?
Well, number one, I would ask you a question, and that's who are these mystery teams? Because the Eagles, other than Buffalo and Kansas City, the Eagles beat Minnesota, who was the second best team in the NFC. Now, I don't believe that, but by record they are. Dallas, I believe, is the second best team in the NFC. They beat them, granted with Cooper Rush, but they won the football game, and Dallas beat everybody else with Cooper Rush. They managed to win the football game. So I would say, if you look at the Eagles and the NFL, other than Buffalo and Kansas City, who meets that definition? They can only play who they play. So
agreed.
That part of it isn't going to be answered until the Super Bowl, potentially, because that's the only place you're going to face Buffalo or Kansas City. And maybe they're better. And, you know, if you ask me who the best team in football is today, I would probably lean towards Buffalo over the Eagles. However, you know, I think the Eagles could beat them if they had their A game on a particular day, and Buffalo showed up with maybe their B game, their C- game. I certainly think they could beat them. From the standpoint of, you know, what they need to do better defensively, I think you saw it. I think you've seen it all season, and you saw it again today with Davis Mills. Yeah, he is skittish as all get out when it's 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12. The drive's over. The kid's got no internal clock. When he does throw the football, and I've been talking about this all year, that's the Eagles' whole plan. When they get you in 3rd and long, they're really, really good. When it's 3rd and 3, like it was early in the game, and we saw last season, they're not very good. But they're like everybody else. So the goal is to get to 3rd and long, and they were doing that really, really effectively. Now we'll see if they can do it as effectively without Jordan Davis. But when they did get there tonight, they shut down Davis Mills at every turn. He had no idea what was going on. No idea.
John, on that note, because we talk about this all the time, and Seth, rightfully so, is worried about when they play a good team, are they going to be able to cope with some of the flaws that they show against these inferior teams? And so my question to you is, if they play a better team, and you're right, that you go, who's this team that's they're going to need all this ammunition against? And when they get to Dallas, they will. Obviously, maybe the Giants, they will. But is it possible that they know they'll need to step up to a higher level? They won't have to be complacent playing the run against a team like the Houston Texans because they know they're better. They may not think they're better in a match against Dallas and play completely different. Add some pressure. Be better against the run. Am I missing something here?
No, I think you're right, because every time there has been a sense of urgency in certain games, the Eagles have answered the bell. I don't think there was a sense of urgency. I think it was natural to take this team for granted. I think they did. And ultimately, talent won out. And when the Texans got down 2 scores, you said, okay, that's it. Game's over, basically, because they're not equipped to play from behind. Now, was it a little bit disappointing that the Eagles let this team hang into this game until the 3rd quarter? Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but it's also a little bit understandable if you talk about the early week they're the team traveling 1,500 miles, not the Texans. So that plays into it as well. They don't practice. And look, I said about the coaching staff, I didn't love the game plan. They came out with tempo, throwing the football all over the field. Maybe that was to get Jalen Hurts some feel good moments in Houston. When you're facing a team with a 32nd ranked run defense that's been historically bad in their first 7 games, and you run the ball better than just about anybody, to me, that's common sense. All right. Not every week, but this week it made sense. And the Eagles didn't get to that until their second scoring drive. Their second scoring drive, it was 8 runs in the 10 plays. They ran right down the field. They converted the 4th down. They scored. And they went right back to passing the ball. So I didn't think this was Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni's best game plan of the season.
You know what, John? We talked about it in the pregame, and I said the same exact thing. I looked at Mark Forzetta, and I looked over, at D Gunn, and I said, what is the Houston Texans run defense ranked? And everybody chimed in, oh, they're 32nd in the NFL. They're dead last. I was like, I'm going to the prop window right now and place a bet that the Eagles come out and throw the ball 10 times in a row, because it just doesn't make too much sense to look statistically at what's obvious that you can have and not game plan along that road, rather than trying to do the opposite and bring in the pass rush and create, the stress early in the game that you don't need. Because, and I say that because we can talk about the teams that, that they're better than. It's one thing to turn it on when you need to turn it on. It's another thing when you face a game and all the stars are on the line and everything isn't aligned the way that it needs to. And you know that they're not going to go through a 17-game schedule where all of those things are going to fall in line the way they need to and the way they want to when they want it to. There's always that anomaly. There's always that team. There's always that opponent that has your number. So why not just look at the statistics and say, hey, this is the worst pass run defense, in the National Football League. We're going to run it down their throat. We're going to shorten the game. We're going to score on every single possession, and we're going to bring play action alive. Why not just do that?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's part of it. You talked about the anomaly. You always have upsets in the NFL. That's why the Eagles are the only unbeaten team. There's 31 teams that have lost, even those good teams. Even Buffalo has lost. Even Kansas City has lost. Everybody except the 72 Dolphins has had that week where somebody came up and bit them, no matter how good they were. And some of that is the coaching staff. Some of that is you get a little bit too haughty at times and say, all right, we're going to do this. We can do what we want. We want to get Jalen involved in Houston. I'm not saying that's what happened, but, who knows why they went the direction they went the way they did, but it didn't make sense. When you're facing the third, I'll give you an example. Jody McDonald on Birds 365 gave me an over and under of 77 yards on Dameon Pierce. I said over. Give me the over. He's all Houston has. They know Jordan Davis isn't there. They're going to run him. He's going to break off a yard to get a couple big runs against a bad tackling team. That's the easiest bet in the world for me. It's exactly what happened. The Eagles didn't take the obvious path. The obvious path was this team can't stop anybody running the football. And by the way, they didn't stop the Eagles running the football. The Eagles ran it at their will. When they did run it, they ran it very well. Mm-hmm. So it didn't make a lot of sense.
Hey, John, because we don't have access to all the post-game comments, I digress to you, sir. So in the final analysis, what did Nick Sirianni say about his team's performance tonight?
Well, he was happy to get out of here with a win. I think at any time you're an NFL coach, you know how difficult these Thursday night games are, especially on the road. So I think he's happy to get out. Look, this team's been around since 1933. It's not like they were born yesterday like the Houston Texans, who have one guy in their Ring of Honor, Andre Johnson. They've been around for a long time. And this is the first Eagles team that started the season 8-0. So it's not easy to do that. And I think he understands that. And I think he understands they didn't play their best football tonight, but they were able to get out with a win. Now they have sort of a mini bye. They can correct some things, especially defensively with those fronts. And hopefully they do a better job handling Jordan Davis's absence. But man, you don't get extra wins for style points. So
Right.
it's the NFL. It's not Louisiana Monroe against Alabama. It's not Wofford against Clemson, like I said on the pregame show. These all have good teams. And you saw Dameon Pierce, and you saw Jerry Hughes. Jerry Hughes gave Jordan Mailata fits.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy's 34 years old. He can still rush the passer. I would have gave up a 4th-round pick for him, not Robert Quinn, if they could have made that deal. And who knows? He was on the trade market, but who knows what Houston wanted. That guy can still play. Laramie Tunsil is a great offensive tackle. They still have good players, and all NFL teams have good players.
John, thanks very much for sticking around. We appreciate it. Have a safe trip back from Houston, and let us know if they're greasing any light poles in Houston at this point. I don't even know if they have any light poles. Be honest.
When I was walking up from the locker room, it was like you would think the Texans have won because they were celebrating a World Series victory that they don't have yet, but they have a 3-2 lead.
Yeah. They need 2 more. Oh, need 1 more anyway. John, thanks. We'll talk to you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. It's the Pond Hockey Eagles post-game show. Plenty to come. We got game balls to give out yet and other stuff. Be back after this.
My wife was in an accident that changed our lives.